on the screen and being able to share ideas without the warmth of a hug. But that's extraordinary that UNICA Bologna EduLab events takes place and discuss some profoundly serious topics that are also resulting from the Bologna Ministers Conference Education, released 2 weeks ago, as you probably all the people from this audience already know. We are happy as the university can strengthen the pole of excellence in the field of advanced research in the higher education, teaching and learning area, articulated very coherently by CIVIS working package Teaching Excellences, which is managed by the University of Bucharest and extended at the university level through the actions, synergies of the two centers. We have a Center for Development in the Higher Education staff and also the Learning Center of the University of Bucharest, which will be probably able to have a wider impact and an increased visibility at the European level. Together with our wonderful team, and one of them are also special speakers invited today with you to share experiences, whom I thank you very much on behalf of Mr. Rector Preda as well for the deep involvement. We are going on to offer to the university, especially a consolidated strategic placement investment, together with UNICA, with EUA, European University Association, and of course by CIVIS, our European alliances, the most selected levels of international decision-making and consultancy in the field of excellence in teaching and learning at the European higher education studies. We are very proud to share today with you, dear Luciano, this opportunity to organize and to speak on behalf of a community, which is a special one dedicated to the higher education topic. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Luciano. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Romita. It is a great pleasure to open this EduLab meeting. EduLab is a very important activity of UNICA. As you know, UNICA at the moment has 53 universities in 37 different capital cities. And EduLab is one of the oldest working groups. We celebrated last year the 20th anniversary of the EduLab. We started many years ago as a Bologna lab, but then we realized that actually, we wanted to discuss more than the Bologna process and go into really a real laboratory in UNICA, talking about different aspects, including innovative pedagogies, including digitalization of education. And this topic this year really became so important because of the digitalization push that we received by this tragic pandemic. And I think, all UNICA members are doing a lot in this direction. And it is very good today to share some of these ideas, some of the solutions, in the spirit of UNICA. In UNICA, we try to share good practices and learn from each other. And again, this has been a very difficult year for all of us, but also we think that there are opportunities. I mean, in some cases, teaching online, interacting online with students and with colleagues can be useful. Meetings like this one, completely online, I have to say, even for me, would have been difficult to imagine 1 year ago when we met in the last EduLab. But indeed, I think the UNICA webinars are proved to be quite successful with a good participation. We organized different activities in the last few months with again a very good feedback from the members. So I think we learned a lot, and we will go back probably very soon. We hope a new situation, normal, but we call it a new normal because I think all of us we are planning to probably keep some of the good things that we learn and maybe go towards a more hybrid situation and try to again to use some of the lessons learned. So I don't want to talk too much at this time and to leave space, of course, to the speakers. I want to thank very much the University of Bucharest for promoting this event. And first of all, the Rector, Marian Preda, Romita Iucu, the President of the Council for Orientation and Strategic Analysis of University of Bucharest, and my friend Sorin Costreie, Vice-Rector for University Networks and Public Relations, but also member of the UNICA Steering Committee, and also all the other colleagues at the University of Bucharest, Lucian, Ciolan, Anca Nedelcu, and who will give a talk later. I also want to thank very much the European Commissioner. We will have a speech very soon by Adrienn Király, the head of the cabinet of the European Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth. And I want to thank also the European University Association, because we will have a very interesting talk by Tia Lukola this morning on micro-credentials. This is a very hot topic in this moment, and Tia is an expert on that. I think it's very important to discuss in UNICA, but also in CIVIS. This is a very important topic, as it was mentioned at the beginning. This is a joint event between UNICA and CIVIS. CIVIS is an alliance with 8 universities, and 6 of them are actually UNICA members. So it's not difficult to organize joint events. I have to say it is a pleasure to do that, and again to learn from each other. Let me thank also the other speakers from other universities, Clara Molina from the Autonoma University of Madrid. And I want to thank very much all the participants for being online today, and the UNICA office, Laura Brossico and Laura Colò, for doing an amazing job, especially in this moment of crisis. They work so well in a remote way, and I'm very grateful to them. So enjoy the EduLab, and I hope it will be a successful and very pleasant meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. I can intervene right now. Sorry, exactly on the point where I was about to intervene, my computer decided to shut up. So we have to face various problems, and well, the most important problem we have is this COVID pandemic, which hit almost most of us quickly and deeply. And we were forced to move overnight almost all the academic activities online. And that means we have to adapt very quickly to a new teaching context and adopt new norms and regulations. And this is why I'm very pleased and happy to convey today at the University of Bucharest, at the UNICA, and at the CIVIS, we conjoin these 3 important forces in order to cope with this challenge. And with no more further ado, I would like to introduce Adrienn Király, who, as our President Luciano Sasso said, is the head of the cabinet of the EU Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and Youth. So, Adrienn, you have the floor. Thank you.
I think I was just informed that the representative from the European Commission has a technical problem for the connection. So I suggest to proceed now with the first session, and then as soon as she will be able to connect, we will proceed with that talk. So I give the floor to the first chair of the first session.
Well, it happens that I am the first chair, the first session as well. And yes, I agree, we have to be as flexible as possible. So it would be my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Professor Lucian Ciolan, who is the Vice-Rector for Development Projects, Lifelong Learning and Educational Infrastructure of the University of Bucharest. And he will talk us about learning transformation in turbulent times, the case for innovative pedagogies. Lucian, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Sorin. Thank you, everyone. My warm greetings to all the participants today. But first, my warm greetings to and thanks to the UNICA office who organized the whole event here, and a special greetings to colleagues coming from CIVIS and colleagues coming from different universities or academic institutions in Romania. I was scrolling a little bit the list of participants, and we have a very good participation here from all over Europe. So thank you for that. Today, I'm not going to talk from the position of the Vice-Rector, but I'm going to talk from the position of a specialist in education. I will try to launch a few ideas into the discussion about learning transformation in turbulent times. I'm not going to talk about the context. I think that we are much more aware that we wish about what is going on around us and the challenges raised by the whole contextual issues that we are facing now. So I'm going to start a little bit the discussion with a kind of metaphor which does not belong to me, but it belongs to Jonathan Haidt, who in his book published back in 2012, he said something like this, that the mind is divided like a rider on an elephant, and the rider's job is to serve the elephant. And if we want to change people's minds, we have to talk to the elephant. He was trying actually to transmit a message that in turbulent times, especially, or in times like that, when the new normal is on the table, we have to address in the same time both the rational thinking of people, but in the same time we have not to forget about their habits and their intuitions. And now if we talk about learning transformation, we talk about it is easy to discuss about it, but it is not so easy to understand what does it entail. So if we go further with the discussion, just to remind you that we are here to discuss about two different kinds of cognition. One kind of cognition, as Margolis said, goes into the idea of what is generally called seeing that. It is the intuitive thinking, intuition. And here, this is the elephant, so to say. And the other part is the reasoning why, our conscious justification of our facts. And here, we have the reasoning, and this is the rider. And this is why Jonathan Haidt said that if we want to change people, we have to address the elephant. Because most of our decisions are taken not necessarily due to our rational thinking, but most of our decisions are severely or hardly influenced by this intuitive thinking. And when I'm talking about learning change, this is a very inner and deep process, and it doesn't really necessarily go all the time as a decision of our rational or conscious justification, especially that nowadays, times, this transformation doesn't necessarily come as a natural fact, but it comes a little bit under pressure of those circumstances that we are living on. What do we need when it comes to learning nowadays? Are there any premises to leapfrog a little bit beyond all these contextual barriers that we have to face nowadays? It is clear for everyone, and I'm not going to insist, that we need flexibility and adaptation. More than ever before, probably, living in this largest experiment of education from all time, we need a lot of flexibility and adaptability. Moreover, we don't have to forget about the deep understanding that it is not sufficient just to continue or to keep going with our education. We have to focus the learning on the idea of deep understanding, and our habits of teaching and learning are changing, so the deep understanding is challenged. And last but not least, in this very short list that I have here, I think that our generic attention to ethical, social, and cultural foundation of learning should be revisited, because they changed with these times. Ethical issues, I think that nowadays they have more importance than they have ever before. If we go a little bit beyond the tip of the iceberg when it comes to innovation in the learning process, what does it really mean? So if we are screening the literature, we hear a lot of things about immersing students in the flow of learning, about moving students outside the walls, the virtual walls or the physical walls. We hear about maker spaces. We hear a lot about service-based learning, about computational thinking from problem solving, about rotation models of blended learning, and about hybrid learning environments, and about much more than I captured in this small list. So when it comes about innovative pedagogies, we think about the context of learning, changing contextual factors of learning, but changing also the process that learning occurs according to which. And now, when you do innovation, and we have examples of innovation, we collected in our CIVIS project a lot of examples, more than 50 examples of pedagogical innovation. But these pedagogical innovations are small-scale, local improvements or innovations of the learning process. And if we ask ourselves about the idea of scaling, how can I scale up? How can we scale up the innovation? We have to understand that scaling is not expanding. So most of the time we believe that it is sufficient to disseminate examples of good practice that people will take over and then the problem is solved. Well, it's not solved, because scaling, it means much more than expanding. It means deep change. It means creation of educational networks and chains, and I will come back to that. It means empower the base, but especially engage the middle. And I will come back to this middle as well. So thinking about this, what does it mean, deep change? You know, I will take one by one these ideas. Deep change, according to Coburn, means going beyond surface structures or procedures. So innovating learning, it doesn't mean to change the tip of the iceberg, but it means going deeper to the teacher's beliefs, to the norms of social interactions they use, and to the pedagogical principles as they are enacted in curriculum. So that was the idea about the deep change. Then I talked about educational networks and chains, and I will insist on this a little bit. Educational networks and chains are what I'm calling here the meso level of change. And we talk about micro level, meso level, and macro level. The meso level of change, what does it mean? It means network chains of educational programs, degrees, professional or practices engaged in creating innovative pedagogical ecosystem and a solid density of the network. We are a network here. We are a network in the CIVIS. And the challenge is not to build up a network, to formalize a network. The challenge is to give density to a network and to help the network to act in that way that it changes the habits of practice in the network, meaning that we create a new pedagogical ecosystem. Speaking about these levels, layers of innovating in pedagogy, the micro layer of innovation that we are now, again, collecting examples and promoting examples is the level of students, the level of academics, of professors, and the level of universities, of institutions. But at this level, pedagogical innovation is nothing more than experimentation and local improvement. It's an idiosyncratic and personal approach to change. We want more? Yes, of course, we want more. So this is why we talk about the meso layer of change. The meso layer of change is given to the educational networks and chains. And as now universities in Europe are moving towards building up networks, building up alliances, I think that we have to ask ourselves, what is our concept about a network? Is it just a formalized alliance? No, I would say it's much more than that. It's a chained network. And this is the level of process change. And I believe that here it is the ultimate place of innovating pedagogies at the level of networks, of chained networks. And of course, we have the macro layer, who is the policy level layer, the decision maker layer. And here we deal with structural change. Learning is a process, so we have to focus very much, I believe, when we talk about pedagogical transformation on this meso layer, which means, as I said before, it means network chain of programs, degrees, professional, and practices engaged in creating a new ecosystem for learning. Innovating the pedagogies, it is not something that we bring on the table today. We have a very interesting and important study made by OECD on pre-university education. The study was opened up with this very nice sentence: pedagogy is at the heart of teaching and learning. And OECD gave examples of clusters of pedagogical innovation: blended learning, gamification, computational thinking, experiential learning, embodied learning, and so on. And OECD is not the only point for pedagogical innovation. We have very nice and interesting studies coming from Open University over the years. Every year they come up with 10 new trends in innovating pedagogy. And they talk about learning from animation, multisensory learning, online laboratories, learning through open data, or other kinds of pedagogical innovation. What we did in CIVIS, as I said, we collected more than 50 examples of innovative pedagogies coming from the 8 universities. We tried to cluster, as the others are doing, as you have said, as you have seen. And then what do we want to do with these clusters? We would like to build up a training and workshop programs for the academics to enable them to do deep change and pedagogical transformation in our universities. Clusters of pedagogical university, we made a different classification just for the sake of it. We have technology-based pedagogical innovation, methodology-based innovation, skill-based pedagogical innovation, or context-driven pedagogical innovation. It's just another classification, but the main idea here, it is, again, the idea that actually the pedagogy is the bridge between the learning principle and learning research on the one side and the teaching practices, the reflective practice on the other side. And I believe that when we talk about innovative pedagogies and transformation of learning, we have to be aware about this layer. What is in here for the near future? For the near future, coming from us as a network, I hope, as a chain network, as a meso layer of change in pedagogical innovation, what you can expect, dear colleagues, it is that we are almost done with producing a handbook, which is titled Innovative Pedagogies, Ways into the Learning Process Transformation. And this is, of course, this is going to be widely available, and the handbook will be accompanied by a small database of innovative pedagogies, a small database that it will be dynamic and open towards other colleagues to contribute and to analyze together what are the trends in innovative pedagogies. We are building up nowadays an advanced study program in innovative pedagogies. We build up trainings and workshops that would enable academics to better understand, to exchange ideas, and to contribute to what I was calling deep change. And last but not least, we try to build up a network chain of pedagogical innovation centers or labs or communities in the broader CIVIS chain, and hopefully one day beyond this chain. Just to close up our discussion here, I will go back a little bit to the layers of pedagogical innovation. So my message here is that when we talk about innovative pedagogies, it's not sufficient to identify examples of good practice. It is a step which is a key one. It's situated at the macro layer because it shows what students, academics, and different universities are doing. But in order to scale up this change and to transform it into deep change in higher education, teaching and learning practices, we have to go and to pay attention to the meso layer. The meso layer, it is this layer of educational networks and chains. And I thought that nowadays, when building educational networks and building chains of universities, alliances, it is the moment to conceptualize what do we mean by those networks? What do we mean by those chains? They are supposed to support deep change, and deep change means depth, sustainability, spread, shift, and evolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luciano. Very interesting and provocative. I mean, Plato, 2,500 years ago, used a similar metaphor that we are like a chariot with two winged horses, a black one representing intuition or emotional reasoning, and a white one representing the rational capacities. So similar with your elephant and rider. Now, since I saw that Adrienn Király is with us, I will give the floor to, and I'm very pleased to have him with us, the head of the cabinet of the EU Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and Youth. So Adrienn, you have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here today with you and to deliver this speech on behalf of Commissioner Gabriel. Your topic today is well chosen. It touches upon a complex reality. And after a hectic but broadly effective move to online teaching and learning in spring, now we feel more prepared during this second wave. The hard work we put into developing new and different ways of teaching and learning, blending physical with online teaching modes and rethinking assessment modes is paying off. Nevertheless, we still have to face big challenges. The crisis revealed a worrying divide in our societies between those who are benefiting from a digitally equipped home environment that is serene and prone to learning, and those that are without. Moreover, already disadvantaged students face a high risk of not getting the support they need. Many higher education institutions have delivered distance learning in its basic form without proper preparation and training. When we did our survey in the summer, academics have stated that they require more professional development opportunities in order to embed remote learning tools effectively in their teaching and learning experience. We have seen where the weaknesses of our system lie. Now it is the time to act. End of September, the European Commission presented its knowledge strategy. Its objective is to address the challenges of our times, ensuring green and digital transitions, while fostering greater cohesion of our societies. Solution to these issues will require a higher level of shared ambition and commitment, as well as deeper cooperation at all levels of our society. Our contribution to achieve this ambitious objective will come through building the European education area by 2025, revitalizing the European research area, and implementing the Digital Education Action Plan. We will apply the lessons learned from the current crisis, but the objective is to go beyond and make a holistic look at education in the transformation in Europe. We will do so in close cooperation with the higher education and research communities. The higher education transformation agenda will be the result of a co-creation process that will take place over the coming months. We will focus on several main ideas, and I would like to share with you a couple of them. First is connectivity and inclusion. Second is digital and green readiness. And the third is innovation. By connectivity, we mean that each higher education institution, big or small, will not act in isolation, but in close connection with the other institutions according to a well-developed cooperation strategy. This will create a strategic connectivity amongst the 5,000 higher education institutions in Europe, providing strong foundations to the European education area. To facilitate the process, we will examine improved quality assurance, the setup of a European degree, and the feasibility of a statute for the alliances, such as the European universities. The objective is to ensure seamless cooperation and mobility for the benefit of students, staff, and researchers. In the current context of the crisis and recovery, it is also very important to prevent further inequalities and the loss of potential talent. That is why the notion of inclusion is a key concept in building the European education area. Everyone deserves an equal chance, no matter where they are and what is their learning journey. Higher education institutions will therefore need to open up to a diverse student, teaching, and research body and strengthen their role in lifelong learning. We will support them in this endeavor by creating a systemic approach in the provision of continuous education and training throughout life. We need to offer diversified and innovative options, and we must ensure that the results of these new learning opportunities are fully recognized and quality certified. Hence, we started to work with multiple stakeholders on developing a European approach to micro-credentials. We will also ensure that the qualification and learning outcomes from periods of learning abroad are automatically recognized. To achieve this, we will take inspiration from the work already underway in the European universities initiatives. The societal challenges that the world is facing today are complex, tightly tied to each other. Therefore, we need to join forces and resources and bring our expertise together. Strategic and structured cooperation, the basis for the European University initiatives, will allow CIVIS and the other 40 European universities alliances to deliver and find solutions and to become more effective. In this regard, we very much welcome CIVIS's mission to promote equitable quality of life, sustainability, and global engagement through higher education transformation. By coming together to learn and work in teams across disciplines, countries, and languages, Talented students, researchers, and academics will be able to devise solutions to the pressing societal challenges. This will bring a shift from ad hoc and project-based activities to integration in learning, teaching, research, community engagement, and campus initiatives across the whole institution. European universities will transform higher education leaders, staff, and learners to become real change makers who will then take part in the creation of a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive society. The European university initiatives are revolutionary. This is why we ensure the rollout of them in the new Erasmus program. In developing our future plans for higher education transformation, we are mindful of the progress that was already made, and therefore we focus on complementary initiatives. In particular, mobility, quality assurance, and recognition are the most successful areas of cooperation. Nevertheless, there is still a lot to be done. Some countries have moved faster than others, and some embedded reforms more deeply. We see that students, researchers, and higher education institutions may still face unnecessary obstacles when working together. We need to go further and set new ambitious priorities for action to ensure that European cooperation in higher education reaches its full potential. Therefore, we in the European Commission welcome the new priorities which were agreed by ministers at the Bologna Ministerial Conference on the 19th of November. The ambitious Rome communique reaffirms our joint vision for an inclusive and innovative approach to learning and teaching, for much deeper and integrated transnational cooperation in higher education, research and innovation, for fundamental academic values, and for securing a sustainable future for our planet through higher education. Most importantly, it is a loud call for stronger support for underrepresented and vulnerable groups to access and excel in higher education. I wanted to share with you these important milestones with you because we will build on them in the coming months. We will, in early 2021, launch various public consultations, not only on higher education transformation, but also on the European approach to micro-credentials and on the initiative on education for environmental sustainability. I encourage all of you to make your voices heard when we do this, as we want your visions for higher education to be part of the plan. As we all know, no plan, big or small, can be implemented without appropriate financial resources. For this, we can count on the current and future Erasmus programs, but most of all, the synergies with other European funding programs like Horizon Europe, the European Social Funds, and the European Regional Development Fund. Synergies will be also essential with national funding. Dear colleagues, none of us can address the current challenges in isolation. However, we can be successful if we act together. By working together, we can ensure that higher education, along with our surrounding community, emerges stronger and more connected than ever before. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and thank you for sharing with us the view of the European Commission. It's very important. And also, thank you again, the third time, for coming and delivering directly all these important points. And I agree, only together we can succeed to have a better Europe and to cope with this crisis. Thank you. And if you will stay, I'm pretty sure that you will get questions at the end. If we have some urgent questions now, we can address, I don't know if Ms. Király can stay up the end of the session.
I can stay a little bit if there are questions.
We'll see on the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, it seems that we don't have any urgent question. I'm pretty sure that our participants have a lot of questions. So we will go further with the program. Thank you again for your presence and intervention. And I move now to my colleague from CIVIS, Clara Molina Ávila, who is professor and vice-rector for undergraduate studies at University Autonoma de Madrid. and she's going to present us what does face-to-face mean in higher education and what do we need it for. So Clara, you have the floor.
Now, I'm going to try and share the presentation. We were trying a minute ago, but then it's always difficult. I think this is how you do that. Is it all right? Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yep. Yes. Thank you. Well, in my case, thank you for having me, and I think it's very fortunate that I happened to talk after Lucian and Adrienn, because the first was talking about the meso level and emphasizing its importance, and Adrienn was mostly emphasizing the macro level. I think I'm going to concentrate on the micro and on the level that we, all of us as people at the university, as lecturers in our case, or people working as staff, have to I don't know, put into the discussion. And well, I was thinking that it's almost half a year ago that we met, also in CIVIS, also in UNICA, also in Bucharest. And at that time we were finishing a course suddenly interrupted by the pandemic. At that time we were discussing innovative pedagogies in turbulent times. And we were sort of assessing how things had been going on and sharing what the situation had been like at our universities. And we, in a way, thought that it was the beginning of the end. Well, now that we're finishing the first semester of another academic year that has been marked by the pandemic, we know it is not the beginning of the end yet. We do not have the emergencies of last year, I think, but it is not over, and I think it's a very good idea to sit down and think together. In my case, what I'd like to put on a table for us to think about is the meaning of face-to-face in higher education. Obviously, in 15 minutes, I'm not going to give answers, just raise some questions. And I will be speaking from my point of view, that is the point of view of my experience of the pandemic in Madrid. I'm sure that in other places things will be different, but I think that probably the pandemic is impacting us in ways that we can share, so we can try and draw some conclusions. Now, one of the difficulties that I found when I started thinking about what I wanted to share with you was how to translate into English a word, presencialidad, that a year ago was hardly part of my vocabulary. Well, the root of the word's clear, presence. And then I started to look for alternatives in English, and I found many. You have them on the screen: face-to-face, in-person, classroom-based, on-site, on-campus, in-class, physical. I even found an online forum where as the opposite of online or distance education, some people propose traditional or even normal. And that's my point. What was normal, and that Luciana was saying this at the beginning, what was normal up until now, it is no longer normal, and it won't be normal for some time. And that's why I think it's worth stopping and thinking about this, because, well, the return to face-to-face teaching is going to take longer than we anticipated in the spring. And also because there are some things that have already and inevitably changed. And for example, we are now using Zoom. Well, again, a year ago, I didn't know about it. And now I use it virtually every day. For some of the things, the new things that the pandemic has brought about, we like. Maybe we like the opportunity of meeting like today fairly often, more often than we would have had if we had to travel probably, so that is a good thing. Some of the things we don't like for sure, but in most cases, I think it's not a matter of yes or no, it rather depends on what for. And well, one of the things that all of us have probably been experiencing our university is a debate, heated debate, I'd say, between those teachers who are pushing for eliminating face-to-face classes until there is reliable test and trace or even a vaccine, and some of the lecturers who are reclaiming the classroom, the physical classroom, as an essential space. In Spain, at least, the debate has also been held at a national level, and there's a lot going on in the press about whether or not to keep classrooms open. During the first wave, in Spain, all the classrooms were the first thing to close. Now in the second wave, we want them open at all costs, even if some of the spaces are closed or very severely restricted. We are making a point of having classes open. Well, of course, things are very different in higher education because our students are adults, and their attending classes or not is not really going to disrupt family dynamics, because no one has to babysit for them. But nonetheless, I mean, they do fill up public transport. There might be potentially vectors for contagion in society, yet we insist on having our universities open. And well, we all know that at the end of last summer, Cambridge announced that they were going online only until this next summer. But I think that the majority of our universities have not followed suit. We're not doing that. And I think that most universities, what they're doing is they're trying to make an effort to show that while we are following health and safety protocols, we are still offering face-to-face teaching and a campus experience to some extent. Well, of course, maybe the reason for that is to avoid drop-offs and fee refund claims that might certainly jeopardize the system. In some of the cases, as in Spain, it has been by ministerial order that we have had to adopt a system of adapted attendance. So in a way, in some sectors, virtual has become a taboo word in political terms, in part because of the pressure of families and of students who want face-to-face education. Now I'm going to show you a video. It's a very short one, 2 minutes and a half or so, that was posted on the web over a month ago or so. Let me see if you can see that. Can you? Do you see a girl? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to play the video.
Well, unfortunately, the video, in my case at least.
Wait. I'm gonna stop it.
I can see only the picture.
You don't hear what they're saying?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe they can try to have it from the instead of me showing my screen, they can try and show it from your side.
I think Laura should be in the best position to.
I can try, of course, but there was a suggestion that maybe you needed to restart the share screen in the chat. Okay, I will try again.
Copy and paste the link. Yeah, and choose the new window, but that's what I was doing.
Okay, I will try on my side. Let's see if it works better. But basically, I think it's better maybe to open it from YouTube directly, maybe.
Studying at the University of Bucharest during the pandemic has actually been nice.
Now we can do the opposite. We can hear, but we can see.
Because most of my classes are face-to-face. I'm getting the guidance I need. So I'm still able to come in, I'm still able to see people, talk to people. Face-to-face is very different than an online experience. But we do have little squares where our studios have been set up in that are all 2 meters apart. And then obviously if we are moving around, we do put our masks on. So from that perspective, yeah, my uni studies have still been quite face-to-face and normal, as much as they can be, which I really appreciate. Studying a healthcare degree, being on campus is obviously an important part of learning what we're working towards. A lot of our curriculum is obviously 50-50 split, so we do 50-50 theory and 50-50 in practice, and having this face-to-face has enabled, you know, it's a better understanding and being able to have lecture support. And I think from a mental health aspect, being able to have the support from your cohorts has helped dramatically, really. Studying during a pandemic is obviously really odd. No one's had to do it before, so it's all a bit different, but I think they have prepared us really well for doing that. It is incredibly important to have one-to-one contact on a practical course like nursing, midwifery, whatever it is. So it is nice to be back, and we have 1 or 2 actual practical sessions back on campus to do things such as life support, manual handling. So we have all those practical elements, but then you do a lot of theory off campus as well. So we do things such as safe Medicaid exams, so that is medication, how you measure that, so that you can bring that then into practice when you come into university.
Since returning to campus from like online study and all that, because of Corona, it's been not much different. Like we've been face to face, like the teachers have been given the same support as they did last year. Everything's the same. Just being back on campus and being more hands-on and everything, it fits into the like art thing, because you can't really do much of it online because you need materials, you need like space to work and everything. So yeah, I feel like it's been really good just being back face to face. So it's just what I needed.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm gonna try and share my screen again. Well, sure. No.
Clara, do you want me to share or?
Well, you can. Yeah, you can. You can do that. Okay, so well, as you have on the screen, basically, it was a bit hard to hear, but well, you have the link in the chat. Basically, what the students were talking about was they were talking about the network for support. They were things like guidance. It was nice to be back because of the practical element, and well, I think that is relevant because I think we're talking about a context, we're talking about all those aspects that are not only intellectual in a way, but also tactile, sensory, visual, emotional. And that's where I think we have to remember, mostly as lecturers, that there are many different types of learning, and that the different formats, online, offline, synchronous, asynchronous, can and should be used for different things. So again, it is not a question of yes or no, face-to-face or not, but rather on what for. And well, on the next slide, we have a quote from a Columbia University professor. Basically, what he's telling us is that, well, there's a type of learning that happens in cafeterias, and it has to happen in cafeterias. There are some things that can happen online. That's why we have hybrid teaching, and it is okay. And well, sometimes we will want to as he says, fly thousands of miles to break bread with a treasured colleague. But there are some other things that can be conducted online, and that's fine. And so we as educators should not worry about being replaced by machines or whatever. I think that what we do have to do is we have to ask ourselves what face-to-face means to us in higher education. We cannot simply expect the storm to go away. That should be the next slide, because even if we try to just get shelter until this is over, well, we would come out of hiding to a world where nothing is the way it used to be. I mean, it makes no sense to go under the knife in an operation room as we did 3 centuries ago. I think the pandemic has shown that it really makes no sense to insist on teaching as we did 3 centuries ago. Of course, not the same, but I think that not everything has to change, and not everything has to remain the same. We have to decide what to change and what to keep. Laura, can you please move on to the next slide and the next slide? Because what we have to do is we have to no, sorry. I was watching back, please. I was watching my screen, not yours. Back. No, you're going forward. You're going forward. Back. Yeah, okay, you can stop it there. No, the Lord grant me serenity. That is San Francis of Assisi, and it is probably one of the most difficult things to do in life. Certainly, it is something that we have to do now. We have to decide what are the things that we're going to change and try and do it. And I know it's very hard, but I think there's no other choice. And we will all have our preliminary answer to the question. Mine, for instance, has to do with the different ways in which we communicate. That should be the mask slide. Because I've been thinking of how we communicate not only face-to-face or online, but also with or without a mask. I was recently at a workshop where for homework, we had to record and analyze very short presentations. Well, some people recorded themselves speaking, some others recorded themselves presenting a PowerPoint, some others presenting a PowerPoint with voiceover, others just an audio, and the difference was huge, enormous. Even listening to the same presentation with or without an audio format really made a difference. So what I did was I decided at that point that I would never just send an audio file to my students, because unless you're an expert in podcasting, it doesn't work. So these are the things I'm thinking about now. I'm sure that you will have realized other things over the course of this month. And I think that what we have to do is put them together and detect problems and sort of share solutions, because it is a new beginning. It is something that we have to address. Sometimes distant learning is presented as a low-cost alternative to face-to-face learning. That's why maybe it triggered so many negative reactions. But whether we like it or not, it is to, I mean, there's no going back. It is here to stay. So, well, so some of us, this has, I don't know, suddenly appeared in our lives And of course, we are struggling because we didn't anticipate it. But we've got to remember that our students were already living a different world, not to mention young kids. So no matter how much we resist, no matter how much the university as an institution resists change, then change is going to happen no matter what. I read of someone, that's where the next slide comes in, who spoke of the coronavirus as a time tunnel, where the pre-existing dynamics were anticipated. So it was sort of a catalyst for change, a change that was going to happen no matter what. Well, I think that what we've got to try and do is make sure that this accelerated change takes place in the best possible conditions. And that, I think, means two fundamental things. They are on the next slide. One, I think, is that we've got to rethink what a student is, because we're not only talking about full-time attendance to class, in class. We also have to assess how that has an impact on study programs, because we've already realized that we do need much more flexible forms of quality assurance accreditations, and the micro-credentials that we're going to listen to about in a while, that unbundled degrees will be essential. I think also that we've got to rethink teacher training, reinforcing the support that students were demanding and that they associated to face-to-face. And also we've got a challenge with assessment, with how to, for example, assess students without legal constraints, the ones that we have when we are doing distance assessment. So all those things that are linked to distant teaching, I think we've got to think about, but not resisting it. That won't work. And that, I think, is all I had to say. Sorry for the problems with the PowerPoint and video and everything. Let us hope the discussion goes smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Now we are opening the floor for questions. In fact, we got two questions, two long questions. I'm going to read them. Okay. So, question to all panelists and to Adrienn and Király. Unfortunately, Király is not more with us. So, the first question: in Romania, we are facing an enormous challenge regarding the access to a quality education in general, and especially regarding the students from disadvantaged backgrounds. The pandemic context only deepens the already existing gaps in education and the society. The Romanian authorities couldn't address accordingly the problem before pandemics and nowadays. Civic society, including our academics, appeal continuously in order to raise the awareness of the issue with little impact so far. How can the participants, institutions, academics, networks, and European Commission representatives could help the civil society to enhance their voice, aiming for a more inclusive and equitable education policies in Romania, at least for the next programming period 2021 to 2027? And this question comes from a researcher and activist, master and PhD student in the management educational risk from the University of Bucharest. So, Lucian or Clara, who is going to address that?
Well, probably I could address the more specifics of the question because it regards Romania.
Romania.
Yeah, and it happens also that I know the person who asked the question, being a student of our university. I'm not going to get long here, but in countries like Romania, I will try to broaden the answer and to make it relevant also for the other countries, because I believe that equity and access issues for disadvantaged or for marginalized groups are not just an issue here, are an issue all over the place. And one of the common mistakes that it is done here, it is the type of one-size-fits-all educational policy. I mean, wherever you go, you find in educational policies different kind of interventions or measures trying to address this access and equity issues. The problem is that access and equity issues, especially the equity issues of disadvantaged, are so diverse from one community to the other, from one person to the other, from one family to the other, that one size fits all doesn't work. So what I'm suggesting here, it is that decision makers should take the approach of what I call acupuncture type of educational policy. So they should identify very tiny and precise problems and not address them through broad, unique solutions, because unique solutions doesn't work here. And I think that another important issue is that this problem should not necessarily be solved by the top level governments, but they should empower local level to solve these policies. Being so diverse in nature, being so specific from family to person to community, I strongly believe that getting closer with the decision to the beneficiaries would help find the best solution of this approach that I called acupuncture type of educational policy. I think that we should go down to the lower level and empower the lower levels to deal with the problems, because equity issues and disadvantaged issues are policy level problems, but most of all they are what Clara was calling micro level issues. So if you try to solve the micro level problems only with macro level solutions, is not going to work, in my opinion. That was my answer.
Thank you, Lucian. And now we'll move to Clara, because we got a question from Universitatea Autonoma de Madrid, from Francesca Maria Marchetti. So after several months teaching remotely, my experience is that clearly we have learned something positive from this exercise of being forced to give classes remotely. Yet there one key aspect that face-to-face classes provide, and that is very hard to substitute in remote teaching. This is the interactivity teacher-student. I am referring to teaching of theoretical subjects. It is clear that in experimental practical subjects, it is even harder to substitute being present. In my experience, there is no blog creation, remote online tutorials, informal online meetings, etc., etc., that can be equivalent to a face-to-face class with direct interaction. Students tend not to ask as much remotely as they do in presence, and question making is a crucial point in the learning process. So what is your opinion about that, Clara?
Well, I think it is something that we can all give an answer to. It is true that obviously all those things that require interaction, particularly if it's informal interaction in a way, those are going to be much more difficult. I think that for that we need more training. We as teachers need more training. And for example, this is something that I've been acutely experiencing these days, because it's the end of the semester and we're having questions and answer sessions with the students because they're facing the final projects, the final exams, and I was worried. Are they going to ask questions? How is this going to work? Well, I think that we give them, for example, if we set a time for questions and answers before any given exam, and we give them very clear instructions of what to do. So, for example, prepare something to project on the shared screen so we can all see what your problem is. And we can try and, if you give students very clear instructions of what we're going to discuss or how the questions are going to be dealt with, then it works better. But it is true that we in a way we are improvising, and that's one of the problems, because as Lucian was saying, some of the criticisms come because there is unequal access to, for example, online resources, and that is true. And that's not only something that happens in Romania; it happens everywhere, I think. But for example, at our university, we during the first wave, we were very worried that our students might be disconnected because they didn't have a computer, maybe, or they didn't have a connection. So we tried to reach every student and ask them, do you need something? Can we give you an internet connection plan, or a computer if you need it. Well, we've got over 25,000 students, less than 100 requested any help. So in the case of the higher education, I think that the gap is not digital in a way, but the criticisms come because students or families perceived distant education as worse than face-to-face. So we have to try and think of ways to, for example, foster interaction. But this is the first time that we're doing it. And well, we got to remember as well that what we're doing, which is emergency online teaching, is not online teaching. It is emergency one. So it is hard. I don't know if do you have other things that you could contribute?
Lucian, if you can say something.
I think that we've managed to address somehow the challenges raised here by the answers. So no further.
We got other 3 or even 5 questions. So let's move forward. So the next one is a question which goes to all of you. We talk about change and innovation, etc. Whose change is it? The system, teachers, students? How will equity in the change be achieved? It's from James Sunny Quaco, research fellow from Tallinn University. So who is going to address that? Clara, Lucian?
I think it really has to do with the 3 levels that Lucian was addressing. All of us have to do that. I mean, at the end, and of course, it's easy to do this. I was saying, we've got to, I mean, we need more policies. We need answers from quality assurance. We need, so yes, of course, the higher level institutions have to do something. As university networks, we do have to, I mean, and we're doing it. We're thinking of, for example, online virtual mobilities. That's one way in which that can be addressed. And also as individual teachers and administrators and even students, all of us have to do that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I will just support what Clara said, and you know, if we go back to this level, I think that the bridge here is what I called the meso level. I believe that if we look to again to this institutional movement in Europe in universities, I'm referring now to just to higher education. One of the aims of creating these networks is not just to build alliances and to score better in international testings or become, you know, higher ranked than universities in other continents. I believe that if we conceptualize this network process as a tool for transformation of teaching and learning, which is the, you know, the transversal process in our universities, I think that this is a way to go, in my opinion. Of course, that you should address all levels, experimentation at smaller scale, policy level at the broader scale, but what is in the middle, it keeps the things together. So if universities are having still this key mission of education, I believe that if we pay attention to this process transformation of teaching and learning, which is not structural transformation, this is the policy making, and it is not also small scale experimentation, that it is local and idiosyncratic, as I said. I know that it could sound like a broad answer, but difficult questions deserve broad answers, I believe.
Right, thank you, Lucian. We'll move forward to Margareta's question. We all agree that there is no going back. Maybe it is the right moment to move forward from the industrial model of large classroom to fixed schedule to a much more flexible face-to-face education. Would this possible? Are out there any models? Again, one of you.
I wouldn't know. Of course, we all want that, but that's probably the main challenge we already faced when we entered Bologna, the Bologna process. We were thinking of small seminars with few students and very detailed attention to individuals. but then the conditions weren't there. So we've all had to implement the system in ways that were not ideal. And I think that nonetheless, it has worked. I mean, what we have now, I think, is better than what we had 20 years ago, for sure, even if it is not perfect. So I guess that in a way, we will not implement these different face-to-face and online blended learning in the ways that we would have wanted to, but it'll be better than when we didn't have anything. Because, for example, one of the things that we are now discussing, I mean, one of the problems that we found, but in a way ignored when we went in the higher European education area, was the problem of those students who study and work at the same time. That was very typical before we introduced Bologna procedures. We had students working in the morning and studying at the university in the afternoon or evening. When we introduced compulsory attendance to class and continuous assessment, suddenly being a student became a full-time job. And so a lot of students were not able to remain at the university because they had to work at the same time. And I think that with the opportunities that now we're getting for distance education, we again have to introduce those students that were expelled from the system and that we can welcome again, I think.
Okay, thank you, Clara. So let's move forward. We still have 7 minutes of discussions. The next one, it's more a comment than a question from Luminița Măruțescu. The online teaching is challenging. Students are not connected with each other. It is very important in learning to talk. The professors are not able to see their reactions and in real time to adjust the teaching process. I think we agree about that. If you want to discuss, or I'm going to read the next one and maybe to combine a response to them. The next one, it's a clear positive reaction. Thank you for your answer, Lucian, Ciolan. Very useful as usual, local level empowerment and acupunctural type of education policies. Thanks, from Laura Greta Marin. And from Tia, in addition to public, perhaps thinking that distant education in worse than face-to-face one, another challenge in the is worse than face-to-face one. Another challenge in the current situation is that students that sign up to face-to-face teaching experience are now forced to distance learning experience. This is one of the reasons why they are doubtful about the quality. The situation will be completely if the teachers and the students offer the online environment in the first place. As Lucian said, there are no one-size-fits-all in this respect either. Preferences and learning styles are different. So this is all we got so far. If you would like to comment on this comment.
Just a brief comment in here. I think that the reflection of Tia is really important here, because one of the frustrations both of students and teachers with these online learning environments, it is that they have opted for something else. And they found themselves in the situation that they have to do online learning while they would opted for a face-to-face. But nevertheless, as a kind of anecdotal example, if you wish, more students, especially in the master degrees in our university, are asking me, is it true that we can find a way that after we come back to the old normal, we could still join some courses online if we could not attend directly in that day? You know, we have students that are attending courses now from their cars, getting back to the office, some of them in public transportation. I fully agree with what our colleague Luminița Măruțescu said earlier, that it is difficult. Yes, it is difficult, but it's a trade-off here. It is about having or not having access, being or not being there at all. So I believe that the lessons that we are going to learn, and we have started to learn, will help us all to rethink a little bit, to become more flexible, to become more aware about the fact that this Humboldtian model of the university doesn't need to be deleted per se, but it needs to be flexibilized. And you know, if we look into the calendar and we see in what year we are, and if we look around in the context and we see the challenges, I believe that we have thousands of reasons to operate changes that would make things possible. I'm not talking again about leaving necessarily a model for another model. This is not possible, I believe, from one day to the other, but I believe that opening doors, windows, and whatever else towards innovation and adaptive changes would be a thing that universities should learn to do. And I believe that they started this lesson to learn.
Yes, I think that it goes in line with some of the things in some of the comments in the chat. I mean, the students didn't register for this, and we as teachers didn't register for this. We've been told what to do in the emergency situation, and when we were planning for this course, we thought that things were going to be different. Then things were not different because the pandemic is as bad as it was. But many people didn't really plan for this. I mean, neither teachers nor lecturers. And I think that was the problem, because as one of the participants in the chat said, we have to re-engineer courses. If a course has to go online, it is not the same course, but through a screen. It is a completely different course. And of course it can work, but we have to plan much more carefully. We have to give directions differently. We have to include other spaces and for interaction. So yes, we've got to think of this, but it can be done. It has been, I mean, it has been done. Online teaching has been done for some time already. Only not at a scale. So probably when the dimensions are back to sort of not normal, but I mean, it won't be as small as it was, it won't be as big as it is now. When it is sort of something that is growing, I think will be more control and it will be easier to handle.
Yeah, thank you, Clara. So we have other two interventions and 1 minute. I'm just going to read them. There are more comments than questions. So the first one is from Valerie. Distance learning needs re-engineering the courses. What we have done so remote in emergency, as you said. I have working in e-learning for 20 years, and I agree with the idea to reinforce and deepen the effort we have done in distance learning those past months. And from Elena, for me, online teaching meant becoming more attentive to the difference between empowering students to learn through powerful knowledge and constraining students to learn through powerful presence. In a way, I become very conscious about the way I was capitalizing on the taken for granted asymmetries between the teacher and student built in our classroom spaces. She's a PhD student and teacher assistant at our university, at University of Bucharest. So that's it. We have to conclude. I thank you very much for your interventions and insight presentation. Thank you, Lucian. Thank you, Clara. I hope to see you in the near future, and more than that, to work together in CIVIS, in UNICA, in our universities to cope with this crisis. Thank you.